on Pentecostalism, but as I begin to teach on Pentecostalism, one thing we got to understand, we must be born again before any gifts can be manifested to us in the church. So I'm teaching on the born again experience and teaching us why. We need to know how we are born again and why we are born again. But the first thing that we must understand before we can understand anything about salvation is we must understand the condition and the disposition, the temperament and the state of mankind. And I've been teaching you exactly on the soul. There was two men. You got the outer man and you got the inner man. Jesus died to save our souls. He did not die to save our flesh. God formed man. In the book of Genesis, God formed man from the dust of the ground, breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. When I turn, there you go. God breathed into man the breath of life, and man became a living soul. So what are we looking at is looking at the soul that died in the garden, the soul that needs to be born again. That is the man. We are in a shell. The man is on the inside. That is the living soul that was connected to God, that died in the garden, separated from God because the sin of one man, which was Adam. So God speaks to us in these last days in his word. Hebrews chapter 1, verse number 1. Rashman, please read. Hebrews 1, verse number 1. Read.
In many separate revelations, each of which set forth a portion of the truth, and in different ways God spoke of old to our forefathers in and by the prophets.
Come on, Miranda.
But in the last of these days he has spoken to us in the person of a Son, whom he appointed heir and lawful owner of all things, also by and through whom he created the worlds and the reaches of space and the ages of time. He made, produced, built, operated, and arranged them in order.
Come on, Charles. Or
He is the sole expression of the glory of God, the light being, the outraying or radiance of the divine, and he is the perfect imprint and very image of God's nature, upholding, maintaining, guiding, propelling the universe by his mighty word of power. When he had, by offering himself, accomplished our cleansing of sins and riddance of guilt, he sat down at the right hand of the divine majesty on high.
so he's not in you. He's not on the earth today. He didn't come in the person of Farad Muhammad. He didn't come in the person of King Elisei. He came in the person of his Father. He came in the divine nature of his God, of his Father, which we know God to be a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and truth. We're looking at human depravity. Let us turn our Bibles to Leviticus 2 and verse number 12. God has to begin to do a work on the heart of man. That's where the work begins. The heart, the understanding, the will. I gave it to you before. The heart, the understanding, the will, the heart, the understanding, the will. Well, I had another mark up here. The heart, the understanding, the will, there you go, the intellect, the mind, the thoughts, affections. Help me out, y'all.
Plan,
The plan, man's plan. Thank you, Charles.
Desires.
His desires. Thank you, sir.
purpose,
His purpose. His faith. His imagination, which that's where everything begins at, right?
yes.
And we can just put etc. Okay?
Amen.
Okay. These are what you call the faculties. These are what you call the faculties of man's soul. That is in his soul. That is his imagination, his heart, his understanding, his will, his intellect, his mind, his thoughts, his affection, his plan, his desire, his purpose, and his faith. That is in the soul of man. That's called the faculties